Hey there, folks. Welcome to Leica Camera and Tamarkin Camera's Artist Talk with Mr. Phil Penman. So glad y'all are here. I see some familiar names, familiar faces. Nice to see everyone. We're going to let people start to join us for a minute or two here, and we'll make some introductions and we'll begin. We'll give people a few minutes to do that electronic handshake, sign in, get things going. Welcome everyone.
Thank you very much for putting the event on. We really appreciate it.
Hey, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. Very glad to do it. We're glad everyone's here.
Hello, Leica man.
Hey, Leica man, how are you? Hey, this is great. I'm excited for this. I'm glad that y'all are here. This is the collaboration between Leica Camera and Tamarkin Camera and Phil Penman, and who is here to present his wonderful photographs to us. You can see Phil waving at you. He is in this big, all these squares. He is immediately to my right, stage left, I guess it would be, to my right.
How's everyone doing? Good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. I see a few names I recognize there.
Good. The more the merrier.
Yeah, good to see everyone.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. So we've still got a few people coming in, and we'll wait just a moment or two more and then begin. I wish on Zoom that I could see all of your faces all at once, but they would be so tiny on my screen that it wouldn't work out so well. But suffice it to say that I'm scrolling across all of our attendees, and I'm very glad to see your smiling faces and glad that y'all are here. So this artist talk with Phil Penman is a collaboration between Leica Camera and Tamarkin Camera, and Phil and myself and John Kreidler, who is on the Zoom meeting and coordinating for us questions and facilitating the actual Zoom meeting. So thank you, John, very much, and thank Leica Camera for really putting this all together. We're thrilled. And so actually, since we're talking about Leica Camera, let me introduce John. You may or may not know John Kreidler is the East Coast product specialist with Leica Camera here in the USA, is Leica's streaming tech talk co-host on YouTube. And if you haven't checked out the tech talk, Leica's tech talk on YouTube, please do that. More than 25 years of experience. John can be found during Pro Discovery Days, Leica store events, Academy workshops throughout the country, and check him out on Instagram at Leica Pro Image. You can find him, his work was selected to appear in the new book, Inspiration Leica Academy. So if you don't get enough from his Instagram handle of his fine work, check that out. He has an ongoing obsession with capturing light and shadow that began from an early age, and you can see that passion in his photography. So definitely check out John Kreidler and his work. Again, Instagram handle is at Leica Pro Image. I'll introduce myself very quickly. I'm Dan Tamarkin of Tamarkin Camera. I can be found at tamarkin.com, Dan at tamarkin.com. And I'm happy to make any connections that aren't made necessarily here on this call, on this artist talk on Zoom. So do feel free to reach out to me, and I can put people in touch with one another if you like, if any connections don't happen here. With that, let me begin this evening's festivities with Mr. Phil Penman. Phil, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Good to see everyone's smiling faces.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. For those of you who may not know already or have had a chance to check out Phil's work, please do so at philpenman.com or at Phil Penman on Instagram. A UK, New York-based photographer. Phil has documented the rapid influx of New York City streets for more than 25 years. Many, many, many high-profile clients, the New York Review of Books, The Guardian. He's been around. Photographed celebrated living legends like Jennifer Lopez, Bill Gates, historical moments such as the aftermath of the September 11th terrorist attacks. He has a very, very distinctive style. Has been named one of the 52 most influential street photographers alongside legends like Cartier-Bresson and Sebastião Salgado. He has a couple of books happening. One, his debut book, Street, launched as the #1 new release on Amazon for street photography and has been a bestseller ever since. So if you get a chance, check out his website. In fact, I implore you to check out his website. There are many, many, many beautiful photographs. I wrote a couple little notes about his photography in the introduction and invitation for this artist talk. And there are a lot of photographs that remind me of Andre Kertész and Cartier-Bresson and also Brassai and Fan Ho and a lot of terrific black and white and color photographers. So here's, having made the introduction, now you know who we are. I wish that we could all speak and talk and ask questions as actively, but there's a lot of us on this Zoom. So we ask that you please go mute and use the chat function to ask questions. Our ace, John Kreidler, is going to facilitate the questions that you ask for myself and Phil. And so let me see. Use chat for the questions. It may be best to keep your video off. You can. It's up to you. It depends on when Phil begins his presentation and how you decide to view things. And if you find that it's distracting, you can turn your video off. But mute is very helpful for us. Anyway, with that, we're going to let Phil start talking, and feel free to use the chat to ask questions. We're going to try to get to everyone's, but in the event that we don't, again, I'm dan@tamarkin.com, and I can facilitate ongoing conversations. For any of you that might want to jump up and use the restroom, this is going to be recorded. Please get back as quickly as you can so you don't miss any of the good stuff. But it is going to be recorded, so it'll be available later. So once again, John, thank you so much for putting this all together. And Phil, thank you so much for being here, man. I'm just thrilled to have you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, good to see you all. Dan, you probably won't remember, but to everyone else, Tamarkin is pretty much where I got my start in New York City when I was basically, for those that don't know, I used to be a celebrity photographer in New York City. I was pretty depressed doing it, and Tamarkin became my way out and my addiction. I think 4 or 5 cameras in and 5 lenses. I had a problem. Kind of got me out of one mess, got me into street. So it was kind of my escape from what I was doing with my day-to-day job. And the beauty, so although I hated my job, the celebrity stuff, the good thing about it was I was out on the street all day, every day. I spent about 12 hours a day on a bike riding around, and it just put me in a position where I was able to see things that I wouldn't necessarily be able to see if I was just going out for a few hours. It's take this for example. I don't go around and burn taxis down just for reference, just for pictures, but I was on a stakeout waiting for Madonna this particular day when a taxi pulled up and decided to blow up right in front of us. Thankfully, no one was killed or injured. Everyone got out, but just happened to be, if I wasn't doing that job, I wouldn't have gotten this picture or, put myself out there in Central Park to get this. I found myself, the kind of towards the end of my career with the celebrity stuff, when I was dying out, I found myself going out looking for moments like this more so than the celebrities. So my work just kind of changed. Although I hated it, I wouldn't get pictures like, again, spacemen walking down through Soho. You know, this is me while I was trawling around looking for celebrities. It was so bad. I spent so much time in this neighborhood that Google thought I lived there. That's how bad it was. You know, you're being tracked, right? But things like that, or you'd be cycling along Lafayette Street and you'd look to the left and there would be a mariachi band playing down some little hole in the wall. My buddy Sean there on 42nd Street, just out for money. And then, you know, you've got your occasional Statue of David that's going home to some lucky customer with a very big New York apartment by the looks of it. But it's, you know, it was great. It got me thinking another way. In 2015, I decided to go complete cold turkey with the celebrity thing. I quit the business altogether, and I knew that I needed to put more time into doing this, trying to push my career. I actually took a job working for a cycling company at the same time, like selling Lycra. I was like the Northeast sales manager for a cycling company, and I would go on these. My pitch was I was selling these clothes to like people across, you know, teams all over across the country, and I'd be on these celebrity shoots at the same time. I used to do a lot of celebrity portraiture when I wasn't doing the street, so I'd kind of be in someone's celeb's house, and then I'd be quickly running to the toilet, hammering out these email orders for the other job that I was doing at the same time. And the plan was to do this long enough that I could generate enough money from shooting street to be able to go and quit that. And that's exactly what happened. And now I go around, shoot people walking turkeys for a living, and get paid for it. Believe it or not, you know, you never know what's going to happen. So like that picture that I just showed you with the guy walking the turkey, that's now in the big print in the corporate offices of Blackstone. So you never know, these pictures, you just never know where it's going to go. This one has been bought by a couple of collectors, for example.
Phil, do you find, we have a question, do you find that these moments come to you, or that you maybe spend more time seeking out moments like this? I mean, how much is serendipity, and how much are you maybe noticing that a photograph is about to happen?
So are you really asking me, do I follow freaks around, or do I have a gaggle of freaks following me around?
No.
That's kind of the interpret.
No, well,
but no, in all seriousness, I think it's just a case of being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got to be ready to get it.
And spending a lot of time in places, I would imagine, as well.
Yeah, I got used to it because of the stakeout stuff. Like, spending 2 weeks on trying to get one picture was just part of the job. I have found, though, because I did that for so long, I've now got no patience whatsoever. Like, people talk about like the whole fisherman street photography mentality, and yeah, I have zero patience now. I'm like 30 minutes max, I think, waiting for that picture. I'm searching out different things. Like, this is a little bit more old New York, where I'm, I have different types of street work that I'm trying to go for. So there's like the street portraits. There's those candid moments where you just, how many times are you going to see a guy walking a turkey around? It's
Right.
just that's its own thing. Then there's the portraits where you just happen to run into the interesting people. And then there are these kind of shots where you pre-envision a picture that you want to get, and you might revisit a scene a certain amount of times, waiting for the right lighting,
Yes.
or the right kind of weather. So, you know, this morning we had a foggy day in New York. In my mind, I'm thinking, right, I want to see the city. I'd like to see the Statue of Liberty. So I jumped on the Staten Island ferry. I had this image in my mind of, you know, silhouettes looking out the window at this Statue of Liberty in the fog, kind of in the distance, you know, and these are the shots where I'm thinking about it. So, you know, this shot in the Oculus on the left, as John painfully knows what goes into this, because he's seen me give my presentation on this, but it's not that you walk into a room and you go, oh, that's it. Yeah, that's the shot, you know, and you instantly get it. It might be in there. It was probably an hour of walking around and picking up on different elements and then putting that element with another element and creating that shot.
Such as waiting for somebody to enter that staircase where you have them at the top there.
Well, you know, this particular start, I kind of started over here in the distance, playing around with silhouettes walking in the shadows, and then slowly you walk around and you might start shooting people walking into the shadows. And then it's like every time you take a picture, you're picking up on something new. It's like, well, hang on a minute. If I use these people for scale with this shadow here, but I use this beautiful light kind of giving you scale and location, and then you add in another element like this, and then you're using someone coming down the stairwell, but it can't just be anyone. It's got to be the right shape of person, or even that arm movement. You know, there's got to be something else that grabs you, but it's a combination of all those things that gets you to that point.
Did you wait for very long for that person to appear with something?
That was one of the very last frames. I had a lot of fun shooting in that spot. And when I got home, I'm going through the pictures and I'm just like, everything was ordinary. Yeah. It's just like, yeah, it's another silhouette, another shadow picture. And then at the end, you know, when you're looking at your screen and you're just kind of like that aha moment, like, yeah, that's the one. You look at it and you know it.
Yeah.
And you go, someone else must have grabbed my camera at that moment and took a quick sneaky picture of it.
Now, are you shooting primarily film or digital?
It's all digital these days. The cameras I had, from you guys were like, I had a 6.2, an R8, an R9. I used to shoot a lot of color transparency. I started in the darkroom with film. Okay. So like Tri-X, T-Max, technical pan film, you know, I developed all my own stuff, printed all my own stuff. So, but for client stuff, like these days, unless it's someone who has a lot of money for a big campaign, it's all digital because they don't have the time either. So this stuff's all digital. Like, you know, these are pictures like the stuff I'm showing you now. This is all stuff where you're pre-envisioning a shot again. So like, you know, this shot on the left here, again, it's like, right, it's foggy. I'm going to use that as my backdrop. I've got the lights in the background of 42nd Street, kind of like Times Square lighting it up. The shot I had in mind was people walking across the street. And again, it was one of those things where you look at the images on the screen, it all looks very cliche. And like an important note why you never delete your images on the back of the camera is because I get home and I have this shot where the window is framing it. And, you know, if I went out there for the rest of the week, I couldn't get that same picture, you know, and it was just one of those fluke things, but where it kind of all comes together. But again, you've got to put yourself out there and be there at the right time to get it.
You got to have your camera. You got to be ready. Yeah, absolutely. But that's what I was pointing out when I mentioned serendipity earlier. And it's a good, with digital, I think it's terrific because you don't have to worry so much about exactly how much film you have in the roll. Storage is cheap. You just keep them. Like, one of the things that fascinates me that I'm curious about when I look at each of your images, and really without exception, each of your images, I want to see the rest of that contact sheet. I'm super curious about what else you took and how you curate. And I mean, I don't know if we'll get to that. I'm just mentioning that I'm super curious about that when I look at your photographs. I've got a couple of questions, so if you don't mind, let me.
Yeah, go for it.
How are you doing much in these shots with regard to post processing, knowing that you're shooting digitally? Like, what do you do once you got that terrific shot?
Well, that's the point. You've got to get it in camera. You're not gonna save anything by editing it, so it's got to be in camera. So it's like meticulous when you're shooting it. You're looking around the edges of the frame. Do I need that in the shot? Don't I need it in the shot? And then editing wise, very minimal. I look at it as kind of like the same principles as you would do in the darkroom.
Me too. Yeah.
I don't have the skill set. I don't have the patience to go into like the you could create this picture from scratch now,
Right.
Right. This is the classic example of like where this shot, everyone looks at this and they go, oh, he photoshopped it. And I'm like, well, I'll show you the raw image. It was there when you got there, and it's just a matter of capturing it. For me, there's very little that has been done to this picture. And what I have found, early days of like silver effects, right? We all got very addicted to structure and all these tools. And then you look at it like a year later and you're like, what the hell was I doing? That doesn't even look like an image. And it's the stuff that you over-engineer and you over-edit. It really doesn't hold up very well over time. It might look cool and great at the moment, but you come back to that image, trust me, in 2 years, 3 years, and you're going to do what I did and re-edit everything.
I have been there. I do the same thing. Absolutely. And I'm finding that less is more. Someone once said to me, when you're framing an image, just recall, I think it was Arthur Meyerson who told me, just think of it like this. You're responsible for every inch of that frame.
Yeah.
So you look in your corners, you look in your background. I mean, you're responsible for every inch of it. Knowing that you shoot digital and how little you do in post, what's your walking around camera these days?
Primarily the monochrome, unless I'm doing this kind of stuff. So if I'm shooting like the snow stuff, which is that's my kind of my go-to. If we could get snowstorms all the time, I'd be quite happy. Then I'm using the SL2 for this stuff.
Are you using a zoom lens, or do you have a focal length that you work with almost exclusively?
Primary lenses tend to be all primes, so like a 35 Summilux is probably my go-to. I have a 75 Noctilux, which is my favorite lens. That's just ridiculous. And then I have like a 105 to 280 R lens, and I have, everyone's going to think I'm nuts, but I had that 90 to 280 SL lens, and I swapped it for an old R lens because I prefer the look of it. And I can also, with the adapters, I could put that R lens onto the SL and the M system. Right. So it's a little bit more versatile. So I can go out and I can get those kind of images that I like. So this probably, I don't know, the way I say it is street photography can be bloody lonely. So for me, one of the other assets I like is shooting street portraiture. So it was one of the main things why I love New York. Came here in '94. It was like, it was the place where you could be whoever you wanted to be. You could wear, massive baggy pants and hooded sneakers and Timberlands and stuff and big North Face jackets. If I wore that in Dorset, where I come from, they just think that you were some kind of freak. Over here, you can wear whatever you want, wherever you want. If you want to put a bush on your head, you can do that. No one's going to think any weirder of you. So I just found that being able to do like the street portraiture stuff and getting engaged in conversations with people, Mr. Fashionista on the right, and the guy that's going to scare the shit out of you on the way home on the left. It's interesting to get everyone's take, everyone's their story. Sometimes I'll chat with someone for a minute. Sometimes I might chat with them for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Everyone's
that was
got a
going to be
story.
Yeah, that was one of my questions for you was how much do you engage with your portraiture subjects, or how little? People have very wildly differing styles with regard to street photography in general, but also to portraiture and street portraiture.
I really enjoy the conversation. I think it goes to my days being on the street, the celebrity stuff. Like, we were always on a stakeout, and there was always someone near you that was just sat there as well. I'll give you a quick example. Like, not long after this picture, sat outside Tea and Sympathy, which a chip shop in West Village. There's another guy who sat there, and he's paying too much attention to something, and I'm paying too much attention to something. And he's like, "You're not here for the same guy, are you?" And it turned out he was internal affairs for the police, monitoring some corrupt cop, and I'm there monitoring some celebrity who lives next door. And it's just like, you get into these weird conversations all the time. So there's a thing I find with New Yorkers as well, like people that are actually either from here or they've spent a long time here. They do like to just get in conversation. Like, you have a long chat with your coffee vendor guy. It's one of these like big, small cities where I can pretty much go around any part in New York and I know somebody. Like, it could be a doorman of a hotel or a street guy. There's always somebody, like the guy on the right. I'd love to know why he decided to walk up Madison Avenue that particular day dressed up as the Joker. It wasn't Halloween.
And was he just standing there in the light?
No, the idea behind this was I was trying to get a sneaky picture of this guy reading his paper in the light. And I'm hovering around trying to figure out, how am I going to get this shot?
Yeah.
And I turn to the right, and all of a sudden I see this guy walking up Madison Avenue dressed as the Joker. And I'm like, can I do a quick portrait?
There's your picture. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind just standing over here in the dark shadow while the other guy's in the light? This was like a very quick shot. The guy on the left was kind of like, do you want me to move? I'm out the shot or not? And then you got, stuff like this. This is kind of people that I just find very interesting. The guy on the right, I just thought he had great character. I just went up to him, and sometimes they're very surprised at you asking to take their picture.
Yeah.
They're not the people you would normally suspect, that you would want a shot of. So they're kind of surprised when you want to do their picture.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you typically get releases when you do street portraits? Like, do you use artist releases in these environments that we're seeing your photographs in?
No, I kind of kills the moment, and I'm not planning to use them for commercial campaigns or anything. It's one thing if you decide you want to use it for a commercial shoot, like to advertise something.
Right.
Then obviously you have to have a model release. Otherwise, they're going to sue you.
Otherwise, you're going to get sued. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But it also kills the mood. Yeah,
I agree. I feel the same way. Now, do you ever do that thing where you pretend to fidget with your camera, like you don't know what you're doing while
Oh yeah,
shot
my camera is always going wrong.
Now we have a question, and I'm curious as well, because I want to give you an example. I took a workshop one time with somebody who said, "Don't wear sunglasses when you shoot street photography." I have very, very sensitive eyes, so I love wearing my sunglasses, and I shoot with them. Like I'm comfortable shooting with them with the rangefinder, but people can't see me.
Right.
And people, and so that resonated with me. And I'm like a sunglass freak.
Do you feel you're invisible when you wear them?
I do kind of feel like I'm invisible when I wear them, but at certain times I feel like even though I have access, I feel like a little bit of an imposter. And so we have a question that is: do you find that working in New York and shooting street photography in New York, do you find that having an accent is helpful in engaging with people, that maybe they recognize you're not from New York and they might be a little bit more receptive to your taking of photos?
I think people are generally all right. Like so the thing with street, most people are looking at it's not so much the camera, it's how you're acting, okay, and how you carry yourself. If you walk around like all aggressive and you're in a hurry and everything, people, but if you relax, you smile, like when you're doing sneaky pictures, it's like you're looking at everything but the person you're taking a picture of. You're looking down the street, you're looking at everything but them. And the thing with street is you're never reacting to something. You have to be able to predict what's going to happen. It's like, all right, this is my scene. I need this to happen with that and that at the same time. So the camera is an extension of you. You're seeing someone 100 feet down the road who's interesting. You're figuring out they're going to be good with the sign that's on the wall. If I raise my camera too soon, they're going to walk behind me. I have to predict where they're going to walk so I can pre-focus on the ground where they're going to be, right? So you're thinking about these things as it's happening. So you put your camera down, you've already got your focus point.
Yep.
Your exposure is where you want it to be. The camera goes down and it doesn't come back up until they hit the spot where you want them to be. But you're never like, there's a shot. You were always looking peripheral view, what's coming up where, and it's like the more you do it, the quicker you become at piecing things together.
Yeah.
So I enjoy doing that stuff, but I'm still kind of doing my news work as well. So I'm kind of very fortunate with some of my clients, like the New York Review of Books, where I can pitch projects. So like the pandemic, for example, I was out there every single day working for the papers. After 9/11, I kind of made a lot of mistakes about the kind of pictures that I was missing. So I have all the images from the day, and then the pictures that I was doing after the fact, I was missing a lot of stuff. So kind of like when I look back on it now, the things that stick in my mind about 9/11 were all the missing signs on the bus shelters, like everywhere you went. And I wish I'd shot things like that, because those are the things that I remember now very clear in my mind. So with COVID, I probably each year, 2020, 21, 22, I was editing down to about 9,000 images. And it was always shooting everything and anything. We'd all be, if you watch the news, everyone would think that the streets of New York were completely empty. It wasn't really, that wasn't the case. That wasn't the reality of what was actually going on. So I'd go out and pick up on little things like, the rats roaming the streets, the lone guy on Madison Avenue, different kind of elements to the way I was looking at, I'm thinking book project, what are the images going to stand out 20 years from now? Like the shot on the left was Fifth Avenue. I think I've stood there for like 5 minutes without a single car coming behind me.
Wow.
the shot on the right, you've got this woman in a bubble. She was kind of like they were doing a sneaky little music video shoot. A lot of people, believe it or not, were trying to take advantage of like the empty Times Square to do all kinds of stuff. Moments like this, to me, very powerful. This is kind of where your storytelling, for me, we've got this tired guy on the Staten Island ferry with Lady Liberty kind of watching over us. These are the ideas that I have in my head when I'm shooting them.
What do you think about, since we're looking at these COVID time photographs, was it or is it was or is wearing a mask an issue for street photography? And I think that this person is asking this question in a more general sense, not just in the beginning of the quarantine, but since, I suppose.
So, it's all part of it. But the thing is, so someone said to me very early on, it's like, well, I'm not going to shoot the mask because it's too predictable. It's too cliche. It's like, well, okay, so you're not going to document masks at all. Okay. For me, for the street stuff, it was never really an issue because I would shoot the masks, but they weren't the telling pictures for me with COVID. The telling pictures to me are, it's weird. So we're all stupid apparently, right? We need a box around a set of chairs to tell us what 6 feet is because we're all apparently too stupid to know where we can sit and stand. So we have to have a white box around a set of chairs, or we have a sign on the, you must stand here, and you must stand here, and you must stand here. So to me, these are the telling pictures of, you must stand 6 feet, social distancing, these are all things that you should be thinking of anyway. But it's the fact that it's like everywhere you went, it's very in your face. So for me, I was shooting a lot of that stuff. Also, when you're working as a photographer, you've always got to go against the grain of what everybody else is doing. Okay, if you want to stand out as a photographer, everyone else is following the cause, right? They're pushing whatever agenda is popular at the moment. You've got to go the other way, because otherwise you're just shooting. So for me, the two standout things that never got spoken about was the construction industry and the homelessness. Construction went absolutely insane. It was like every block you walked on were jackhammers and road construction. Huh. And no one even mentioned this or spoke about this. They were doing, in May of 2020, they were painting lampposts on Madison Avenue. Okay, they were doing all the maintenance work. And you're like, really, is this the time? So I'm photographing guys painting lampposts. So I'm thinking about which projects do I want to work on, and the one that like really stood out to me was the homelessness. Yeah. And it was the only story that was out there at the time was how people were annoyed that they were messing up the trains at night. Yeah. So it kind of infuriated me. And also, like I said, I have a platform where I can get my work out there, but it needed to be from a personal perspective. Yeah. So I got the idea from Styles here. And Styles is kind of a regular on 9th Avenue. They call him like the mayor of 9th Avenue. Sits basking in the sun. Very intimidating dude. Huge guy, just sits there all day. I usually cross the road from him because he scares the crap out of me. But during COVID, I'd walk around because the only people that I would see on the street were the people that were homeless. Yeah. So this particular day, I walked past Styles, nodded to him, said good morning. And he said to me, how come you never take my picture? So I was like, all right, I'll do your portrait. And we got chatting. I talk to him a lot now. But he kind of gave me the idea for it. So I went out there with like the intention of telling the story. You know, this is John, originally from New Jersey, ran a restaurant out there. He's been living homeless in the city since 2012. Tilly, she was on 8th Avenue just trying to get $12 to get a pair of shoes. Then you got Tommy here, who was, I saw Tommy, I was walking down Broadway and all this stuff was being thrown into the back of a sanitation truck. And you can see in the shot on the right, those are all the possessions that he was kind of quickly moving to save. So we got chatting and I said to him, you know, I'd love to do a picture of the back of your jacket, you know, the fuck everything. It was like, perfect. We get talking and he's like, where are you from? Because he picked up on the English accent. And I said, well, originally I'm from Dorset, England. And he said, yeah, but whereabouts? And I said, well, Dorset. And he said, yeah, we're in Dorset. And it turned out we came from about 5 miles apart from each other.
What do you know?
Yeah, and here he is on the street. So
that's so funny. Now,
yeah,
did you find any awkwardness like when we have another question about wearing a mask and street photography, and it occurred to me that maybe this question has more to do with when you're photographing people and you're wearing a mask. Did that feel like an impediment, or has it become so ordinary for us now, this mask wearing thing, that it's not really much of an impediment anymore?
Well, I think some people are not going to stop wearing masks for the rest of their lives now.
Yeah.
And then you've also got certain countries where this is very much the norm. So, you know, someone was educating me about the younger kids in China. And I was always intrigued about it, why they're all wearing the masks. You figure out the pollution and everything. And apparently it comes from the pop stars. So like the Chinese pop stars over there, they couldn't go out in public and they would wear a mask to disguise themselves. So all the kids started wearing masks as a fashion statement. This is way before COVID. Okay. So there are certain places that are going to have, that's just the norm for them. And I really hope that it does not become the norm for us, because you want to see smiles, right?
Yeah.
As far as from a photography point of view, but it can be the same barrier as a camera.
Oh, so that's fair enough.
You know, say you're doing a portrait of someone. When I'm doing a portrait of someone, I'm not looking behind the camera.
Yeah.
You know, you'll bring your camera up, you'll get your focus, but the camera comes down when you're taking the pictures and you're talking to them.
I do the same thing.
And shooting whilst you're talking to them.
Yep.
So, sorry.
How do you handle, I'm sorry to interrupt, how do you handle the occasional awkward moments when a person thinks that you're about to photograph them and maybe doesn't like it that you took their photo, or doesn't like it that you're about to take their photo?
I won't do it. If it's going to make someone feel awkward.
Yeah.
You know, you got to bear in mind, I did for 15 years where I was paid to take pictures of people that most of them did not want to have their picture taken, yet they were in the industry of needing to have their picture taken, otherwise they weren't relevant anymore. Right. But we were constantly dealing with that. And I think because I was in that so much, I'm very aware of, like, it's not that important to me. There's another picture down the street. I don't want to ruin someone's day so that I can get some shot.
That's refreshing. That's refreshing kindness to hear. There's a lot of people who just blaze right ahead without really any consideration, and it's interesting to me, and it makes sense because of your background in the stakeouts and celebrity photography. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. When
like, I'm not into it. Like the whole jumping in front of people with the camera.
Yeah.
How can you say? All right. I had to tell someone once. I was shooting. We're on the street. And think of it like this. Say you're a woman, you're on your phone, okay? And someone is either jumps in front of you with a camera, or they stand over you and they're taking your picture, okay? Now take away the camera for 5 seconds. You've just got some person, big guy or whatever, staring at a woman, okay? It's very intimidating. So, you know, put that mindset. The next time you jump in front of someone, you're lucky you don't get punched. And if you get punched, you probably ask for it, okay? Right. So I'm very aware of that, but I can't knock it because I did it for 15 years with celebrity stuff or news. You know, we were always right. having my favorite clip of one of my favorite of my friend Shannon was, I don't know if you ever saw the Bernie Madoff thing, where Bernie pushes the guy and my friend Shannon just throws him backwards. He pushes Bernie. Everything was very up close and personal. Huh. So you're close enough that they can push you and you can throw Bernie Madoff backwards. I remember a friend of mine, Giles, he's like 6'8", huge dude. Tommy Lee once got in an elevator with him, right? And he said something stupid to Giles, and Giles is the wrong person. Giles just lays him out, knocks him out cold. So just wrong person to start on. Anyway, but that was the job back then. So I'm very aware of doing it with this. It's just something that I don't want to do anymore. I quit that business. That's just me.
You can see this, or I think that I see this in your photographs, that there is an engagement, there appears to be an engagement with the subject that's not the jump in front of them with a camera and click, click, click. I mean, there seems to be real engagement there. I think that these things come out in photographs when they're there.
What you got to remember is like, all right, it's not candid as well. If you jump in front of someone with a camera, it's anything but candid, right? It's shock and awe. It's like you get that expression of like, oh, you know, well, yeah, of course you're going to get that. If that's your style, then great, you know, whatever. I like plenty of photographers like that. You know, I like their work. It's just not my style. You know, probably one of my favorite photographers is Gildan. You know, I love his stuff. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, nor could I.
Yeah, I don't have the nuts to do that, but it's a certain kind of picture. Yeah. You know, Martin Parr, same kind of thing. I used to think, but until I met him and he kind of explained his work, I used to think that his was all that, but a lot of his is set up. So I wasn't aware of that either. So, you know, every photographer's got their own style, and that's the whole point, right? We all have our own creative voices. Otherwise, we'd all just be bad clones of each other. You know, for me, this is the work that I like doing, you know, engaging with people. Like, you know, this Sunil, you know, he was made homeless during COVID after, you know, his restaurant went out of business and just found himself living under the FDR Drive. And I didn't even approach him. I was down there doing a location scout for a commercial shoot, and he came up to me and just unloaded. There's a lot of people that I chat with on the street for like sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I don't even take their picture. And I've never taken their picture.
Do you sometimes give these people, the homeless folks that you meet or that you photograph, do you give them like some money or a Starbucks card or something? Do you ever have any other type of transaction with them besides just the photograph or the conversation?
Yeah, if they're so a lot of it's got nothing to do with photography. It's moral compass, right? So each and every person is going to be different, and you can't tell them any otherwise. If someone's on the street and they have a cup out and you want to go and take their picture and you don't want to give them anything, That's on you. You know?
I agree 110%.
That's your thing. That's your thing.
Do you think I'm thinking now of street and portraiture, but street portraits in particular. Do you get different reactions from people when you're using an SL camera versus the monochrome or a rangefinder camera? Do you sense that there's any difference in the way people respond or the way the interactions occur?
You know, the biggest time I noticed it was doing the celebrity shoots.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had this thing where I'd be doing all these old Nashville stars, Charlie Daniels, all these people, Donny Osmond, Paula Deen. Okay, so I was doing Paula Deen, and the way that it used to work would be I would be sent on my own with all my lighting. You know, you'd fly into Nashville, you'd set up, you'd have to do like 5 different portrait shots plus all the interior shots. So I'm doing Paula Deen. She sees one guy show up. You just think it's a joke, right? Like it's some big shoot and one guy shows up. And we're huddling around. I'm getting ready for my first shot and I'm shooting with like an M240 and I got like the tethering mount at the bottom. And the makeup artist goes, "Is that a Leica?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they just say, "This guy ain't fucking around. This is the real deal." And every shoot I would do, all these older people, they would always say, "Is that a Leica?" And it was like this instant respect you got that, yeah, he's no joke. And then the Paula Deen one, they actually made me show all the images before they would let me leave the house. And she turned around and she was like, "Man, you do know what you're doing, don't you?" So it's like, "Yep, I ain't messing around."
That's funny.
So
That's funny.
it's got me out. It's got me a lot of pictures, and I end up sending most of the people I actually do shoots with end up using the pictures for themselves. So it's been good. But I haven't like as far as the SL versus the monochrome. It's always the name, right? Like even the other day, I was going into the new location, the Summit. Okay, I've gone through all the security. I've got my camera around my neck, and one of the security guys comes to yank me, pull me over because no one had done my bag to check my bag. And he sees the camera and he goes, "That's a Leica?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, that's a nice camera, man." Like, "Oh yeah, you get some nice pictures with that." And it's like this instant get them off your back. Like,
Right.
It's not like, oh yeah, it's not like some toy.
Right.
So it's been good. I find I prefer to shoot with the rangefinders personally. The SL I really like for like the wet weather stuff, shooting in the snow.
Yeah.
I find it really good for that. But from just like a general feel, just something I want to use, and that monochrome is just so ridiculously good.
I know, I agree. I have an earlier generation monochrome that I adore, and I was shooting with a friend recently, and it's an M9 monochrome, so it's a few generations old. And I made
that was a good one though.
Oh, I love it. I think that sensor is magic. And I made a couple of pictures, and she turned to me and said, "Does it always make that noise?" Yeah. And I was like, "Yeah, that's the shutter. That's what it is." But it's still, it's still pretty quiet. And in fact, when the M9 came out, or shortly after the M9 came out, the Fed said that in federal courtrooms, no camera can be louder than a Leica M9. That was their benchmark.
That's great. That
was their benchmark, right? And so now these cameras that we're using are, they're even quieter and even more surreptitious. I am a left-eyed shooter, and so I always have my face totally hidden behind the camera, which is one of the reasons that some of the questions that I had for you this evening I'm getting beaten to the punch by our attendees because they're asking a lot of these same questions. I have long said that I'm envious of right-eyed shooters because they can continue to engage with their subjects. Right. Like you were talking about making the portraits where you frame everything up and you're talking click,
Yeah,
click,
yeah.
click, click. Oh yeah, click, 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 click. And because you have that engagement, and that I always ask photographers, especially street, about that kind of engagement, and being a right-eyed shooter with the Leica rangefinder can make a big difference. And for me, it certainly has, and that's one of the reasons I fell in love with the rangefinder, and one of the reasons that I I realized at one point that on an SLR camera, and even on the mirrorless camera, I think to a certain extent, your brain doesn't see the photographs that get taken because the mirror goes up, the screen goes dark, and you've
Right.
never actually seen that actual moment. And
Yeah.
so for me, and I find this is true for many other street photographers, and I kind of wonder if it's true for you or you find it true for yourself as well, that having that engagement is part of what makes a good photograph.
Yeah, I think people's definitions of street is all very different as well. For me, it's just taking bloody pictures. I like the engagement part of it. I like the banter. You get
Do you
some
think
I really enjoy that part of it. You get some playful stuff, some good images. But I like talking. Some people are not comfortable talking to anybody. They like to be just, everything needs to be very stealth, and that's their thing. That's their way of doing it. Everyone has their own style, and it's a good reason. It's a good job that we have that.
Do you think that a faith in humanity or liking people in general is an important element of street photography in a general sense?
I think it's all our past experiences kind of come into one. So what you did for a living, what's your background? For me, I did jobs, all different walks of life, from serving Prince Andrew silver service waitering to picking up cigarette butts in the rain, cleaning up street markets, to garbage man, to DJ, to barman. You mingle with all different societies, all different kinds of people. And at the end of the day, we are all just people. So you've got to be able to get along with everybody. So I think that comes out in your work, and the sensibility you have to people when you're shooting as well. It comes out, and I don't think you can just train that. Like, that's something you acquire from past experience or your life experience.
I see it the same way. Yeah, I see it the same.
Yeah.
This street book is terrific. It's terrific. If anybody who's on this Zoom who hasn't looked at these photographs or doesn't yet have a copy of the book, I got to buy one. Holy smokes, it's terrific.
Right. I think Amazon is probably the only place that has any left now.
Really?
I never knew. When I went, the only reason I ever found out anything about this book is because people were texting me saying, "Oh, I just saw it in this store," or "I just saw it on Amazon," and I never was told anything. So I went on Amazon and I looked up, and it had a #1 next to it, and I was like, "Well, what the hell's that?" So I looked it up, and it was the #1 new release, and behind me was like Bill Cunningham and all these other people, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Like,
top of the charts.
Did
baby.
my mom just go and buy the whole batch in one go? Like, I wasn't sure. And it's actually it's continued to do better, I think, largely in part to like doing a lot of the talks during COVID.
Yeah,
you're getting out to a wider audience, and like, it was still, last time I checked, it was still in the top 50 bestsellers. And so yeah, if you can get a copy, grab a copy, and let me know what you think. I'd love to do another book at some point. I think I just got to start building up the next body of work. And yeah, if you want to see any more of my work, go to philpenman.com or at Phil Penman on Instagram. And I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter and every other bloody social thing that's out there.
I'll tell you that I've spent a lot of time on your website and looking at your photographs, and on Instagram. There is something for everyone. It really is. It's a real treat to look at your feed and to see And to see your pictures, they're in one sense timeless, and in another sense, many of them are very much located in a time. As I hinted at before, I think that there's in your photographs and in the street portraits in particular, I get that this immediacy and this engagement and this humanness, for lack of a better word, that I think is palpable in a lot of your photographs. Now we're about to run out of time, but do I have time? Can we do a couple more questions? Am I good that way? Just a couple quick questions. How much do you zone focus?
$1 a minute.
As under a minute?
$1 a minute.
$1 a minute. Man, maybe I should raise my rates.
Yeah.
How much do you zone focus? Like,
Just with the candid stuff. The thing is, with the way that I shoot is, and most of the stuff that I shoot is all wide open.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I like a lot of depth in my work. So I'm always shooting 1.4 or on the 75, 1.25.
Yeah.
So when I'm trying to shoot people on the street, it's more a case of focusing up on a spot on the road.
Yeah. And that's a great idea.
And waiting for them to come into that, like knowing that there's going to be a short burst once they hit that part of the pavement. I do zone stuff where if say you're shooting on a 28 and you put it at like 5.6 f8 and then just put it at 6 feet, whatever. I do that for the candid stuff, but I like the look at that 1.4.
Yeah, me too.
It's a little bit harder, but I think it's worth it.
I agree. I think that it also kind of trains you to get really in tune with the gear and where the focal plane is and where and what it's going to do.
Yeah.
How much time do you spend when you go out on a typical day street shooting? How much time do you spend taking photographs, and how many images would you say you make in a day, like day of street shooting?
Ooh, depends. If it's a snow day, it's ridiculous. So
you really like the snow.
You know what it is I don't like people. So I just go out there when it's snowing.
I would never guess hearing you talk.
Yeah. No, it could be, so like on a snow day, if I go out, say 4 a.m., get home, I'll usually come home when it's stopped, like the heavy stuff, when the heavy stuff stops, and you'll get home and you'll be like, oh my God, I'm so wiped out. I don't know why. And then you look at like your watch or your phone and say, God, I just did 17 miles walking and I've got 4,000 images to go through.
Wow.
Or like this morning, I went out for say 4 or 5 hours and I'll come back with like, I don't know, 400 or 500 frames, but it might be subtle changes on a composition of a similar image.
Right.
So I'm working on one frame, but I'm just tweaking it different ways, trying different angles.
How do you structure your street photography workshops? If for anybody who hasn't taken a Leica Academy or a street photography or a photography workshop, I highly recommend them. There's something for everyone. And word has it that Phil's workshops are outstanding. I can tell you that they sell out almost immediately. I'm gonna try to get in on one. But we have a question about what's your structure like? Can you give us a brief description of what your street photography workshops are, how they're structured and what they're like?
Long days.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of shooting. So we'll go, all right. So normally like we'll have a Friday evening presentation. Like I'll go through some work, how I want you to look at things. It's not like here are my greatest hits. Here is the stuff that didn't make the cut. And this is the one that made it and how we got there. So we'll spend like a 2-3 hour talk together. Then generally we'll get up for early sunrise. So 6, sometimes earlier. And then we'll go out, shoot for probably about 4 or 5 hours. Then we go in the edit room. I'll walk you through my editing, how I cull. We do that for a few hours and then we go out shooting again in the evening. And then it all happens again the next day. So we shoot a lot. I've got 2 coming up in London. Unfortunately, both sold out. And then I've come back to New York. That's sold out. We're doing one in DC in August. And then I believe I'm going to be doing another one in probably in New York, I believe maybe October. And then I'm probably going to be doing one in Rome in October as well.
Wow.
And then there's talk of doing one in Paris as well.
Well, I'd love to get you here in the Midwest somewhere, whether it's no matter
Definitely.
what city it is, I'm certainly happy to travel to do a workshop with you. Now, you mentioned editing. Do you edit your own photographs, or do you have a friendly photo editor that you work with, or is the curating and editing is something that you do all yourself?
So I'll work with different curators. I think it's very important that you have an outside eye. So you have an emotion, everyone has an emotional attachment to an image, and then a curator comes along and says, it's shit. Get over it. Move on, next. So now I'll work with different curators because it's just good to have an outside eye, especially if you're doing a show or you're doing a book. Like editing wise, I'll do all my own editing. It's all very minimal. When it comes to the commercial stuff, I have an outside editor that I work with called Ken Harris, who's one of the best in the business. Just it's one of these, you start talking and you're lost at hello. It's just like you lost me, man. They know he has every version of Photoshop and he still uses every version because one tool with one is better than the other. And you can't be good at everything, right? So you've got to hire the best people to get the best job. So I'll use them for my commercial work, but for everything else, and then printing, I work with different labs as well around the world to do the shows. I think you got to hire the people that are good at what they do.
Yeah, I agree. And I would like to echo that sentiment. I think that having a curator is absolutely essential, whether that curator is a friend or a partner or a professional relationship or whatever, more professional relationship, whatever it is. Because I've said to people, I'm like, wow, man, I made this great picture. And they're like, meh. And then there's other things where I'm like, you like that one? Really? I don't think that's very good. I think it's really important. And it doesn't mean necessarily that the curator or whoever this actor is that's giving you feedback or input is necessarily right and necessarily should be taken all of their advice, but it is really good, I find, to have that outside eye. In fact, it's essential. And it's also, I think, that humbling, even for a pro like yourself. It is a little bit humbling, and it kind of, for me anyway, it resets the clock. It's like, oh, what was it that they keyed into? Was it the shape? Was it the light? What was it that they keyed into that I either didn't realize was in the image or didn't give credit for being as good as it is?
You don't, the thing is, like, you can't buy into your own hype, right? All of us can be better all the time. Like, I'm always trying to be better. Like, you know where you're at and how much better you can be, like by exploring, trying different things all the time. The moment you kind of think you're already over, in my opinion. So it's very important to take their advice on board. Again, you don't have to listen to everything. The ones that I find very telling, like anyone that follows me on Instagram, they'll know that I'll put up a set of images and I always ask which one resonates with you, because it'll be which one do you prefer? Like, I already know which one I prefer, but the feedback that you get is just invaluable as a photographer, because the stuff that you'll pick up on, you didn't even think of. And someone's seen something, or I did this whole thing on my website where it was like the latest stuff that I did. And it basically, the premise was everything that wasn't fit for Instagram. I find social media can be very dangerous with photography. Like, people start chasing likes and we see that abstract minimal street photography is hot. So everyone starts shooting like that. And you start killing people's creativity. So I came up with this thing, or everything that wasn't fit for Instagram. And it was basically my vision, the work that I like to show and the stuff that I want to shoot that doesn't necessarily chase the likes. The prints that people were buying were not the ones that I would think would be the ones that would sell. you know, it was like a picture of a G-Wagon with someone that was homeless in the distance. And someone's thinking, oh, that's the discrepancy between rich and poor. And that's what they're seeing. And then the next one might be a picture of a bar where it says just one more pint. Or another one might be a street that they just happen to live on, you know, 10 years ago. So again, it was like, these are all things that you can take on board, like feedback. So whenever I go out and shoot now, I'm thinking differently. I'm like, you know, I need to capture all these things because these are things that are going to be possible sellers or they're interesting to somebody. It's all good feedback.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And I have noticed that on your Instagram that you ask for that feedback almost all the time. Yeah. I think that's terrific. I like that a lot.
You know, like you can get, you go through it and you start reading all the comments. Like I reply to every single comment, first of all. So if you message me, I will message you back. I don't believe in ghosting, drives me insane. So if you message me, you have questions about something, I will reply to you. But it's interesting because everybody else reads all the feedback as well. And then they start getting involved and picking up on other people's feedback or agreeing. And then it becomes like this huge group discussion. The only problem is sometimes I put out the odd thing, and because I reply to everything, I think once I had 400 comments, and then you're now replying to 400 comments, which takes a shitload of time.
Yeah.
So
I think it's terrific that you engage like that. I think it's awesome. I think it's terrific. And I wish that we had lots more time to talk, but we're kind of out of time. But I would like to encourage. What's that?
Been a pleasure. Thanks,
it has been a pleasure. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us and share your photographs. I think they're terrific, and I hope that the other folks that are here on our little Zoom artist talk enjoyed it as much as I did. And I always learn something new. I love to learn, and I love talking to new people and seeing new faces. And I'm just overjoyed at how many of y'all showed up. I would like to remind everyone that you are most welcome to contact myself or Phil on his Instagram. He answers comments. And ask questions. Let me know if there's something that you wanted to ask but didn't have it formulated in time, or something that you become curious about. I can tell you that at what I do at Tamarkin Camera, a lot of it is information based. It's not all sales based. So please don't be shy or afraid to reach out with a question. Not everything has to do with buying and selling Leica cameras. Phil, I'm just overjoyed to talk to you, man. This has really been a lot of fun. And I hope that y'all had a good time too, and that you'll continue getting out there taking photographs, and that maybe there's something that you heard or saw here that inspired you in some way, or got you thinking, or at least sent you over to Amazon to buy a copy of this book if there's any left.
Awesome.
So thank you once again, Phil and John, and everybody that's been on this call. It's really been terrific. We hope to talk to you real soon. And there will be a recording. And so if you'd like to get in touch with that recording, please do send me an email, and I'll make sure that everybody gets the recording, and you can view this at your leisure and learn more at your own leisure from this talk. So once again, thank you all so much for joining. Have a lovely evening. John and Phil, thank you so much for this.
Stay well, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.